Let's take a view of what we're doing today from about 30,000 feet and take a look at the whole picture and what we're going to be accomplishing. And let's see here. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is what's a webinar. We're going to talk about the what is, why is it a webinar, and we're going to talk about live, evergreen, and selecting a webinar platforms. But what is a webinar? We're going to talk about different types of webinars because there are different things that you can do using webinar platforms. You can use them for training, you can use them for meetings, and you can use them for sales. A training webinar, and each one of these types of webinars is very, very separate and very, very different. And they each have their own kind of rules and characteristics, so that each of these has you have success using them in different ways. A training webinar is a great thing for a broker or manager to use for in-house group coaching. That's an example of a training webinar. A training webinar like that would also have some really, really good utility for recruiting. So a broker manager who is using webinars in his business to help agents learn things, where agents don't always have to come into the office, where they don't have to have a physical presence, and where he may be able to attract a lot more training, could be done very, very well and used very, very effectively for in-house group coaching. And that type of coaching may be something very, very appealing to somebody who's working in another office. So a training webinar can be a great recruiting tool. Meeting webinars are great. You can have meetings, all kinds of meetings. You can have client meetings on a webinar. You can use GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting to present offers. I can't tell you how many times that I was working with sellers and or buyers and people were all in different physical locations, sometimes around the world. But people, travel for business. You have people who are absentee owners. You have buyers who are in escrow, who are under contract, who may be out of town, and you have people who who it would be nice, to be able to sit down with them and show them something. Well, you can do that in a virtual way. You don't have to do it in person. You don't have to do it in the flesh. You can have a meeting with clients, and you can go over a contract. You can put the contract up on your screen, share that with people, and and go over the points and be very, very clear about that. I think that's a much better way than working with email and other ways. I think that's terrific. You can do presentations by webinar. Goodness, years ago I was using this to do listing presentations. And when you have out-of-state owners, that's a terrific way to do it. It's much more personal. You have an ability to interact, to talk to people, to hear what their concerns are, to be able to meet their objections and go on. And you can have a conference on a webinar. And with some of these webinar platforms right now, you can have a conference and have everybody's face up on the screen. One of the ways of doing this too is having a webinar using Skype. Skype is for small groups, for meetings and for these small conferences and masterminds even. Skype works very, very well. And Skype is for that type of meeting is very, very inexpensive. So it's great for conferences. And then, of course, we've got the sales webinar. Now, this is the one that we're going to focus on primarily today. We will be talking about the others, but for the purposes of Webinar Fever starting out, and for the core training, we're going to be talking about sales webinars and how to use the sales webinars. Again, we're talking about using webinars to engage with people, to reach out and help alleviate their pain somewhere. What kind of pain are they feeling? In real estate, I think a lot of people right now are feeling pain about financing. They have credit issues. They have problems. Sellers have problems because a lot of sellers are underwater and they owe more on their house than their house is worth. And of course, you have lots of new things that are happening. You have trends. So having an educational type of an outreach program that of course is part of your marketing program is what I refer to as edu marketing. And I've got that in bold on that mind map because I think that is really, really key, and that is really where the focus of my attention is for this program. Product creation is another thing we can do with a sales webinar. Again, you can take the webinar and you can repurpose it after the live event is finished. Now, this is early on a Saturday morning. We're creating this live webinar. At the same time that we're creating the live webinar, I am recording it. And when I have finished recording it, I'm going to be doing some other stuff with that recording, and you can do this anywhere. So we're going to talk about other niches and some advanced techniques about working with this material. And I'm also going to be talking today about actually converting this to another kind of webinar altogether. The other thing you can do with webinars is also create bonus material for other stuff that you're doing. And one of the things to do as part of a sales webinar is wrap it up in a package, kind of an offering of information in different modalities for people to read. It's a great bribe. It's called an ethical bribe in the internet marketing world. It's called an ethical bribe is when it's an incentive for people to register. And you may say, if you register for my webinar, I'll be happy to share a special report. What you want to be, to pay attention to when you create a special report or offer that is make sure that the subject in the special report is something that corresponds to the subject in the webinar that you are offering. You may want to take some information and create an e-course. And what's an e-course? Well, you know what? It's really simple. An e-course is a series of emails and perhaps a combination of blog posts if you like that cover a topic in very, very small bites. So you may want to create an e-course. Again, I keep coming back to HUD Homes because I'm just a HUD Homes I have a HUD Homes passion, but you may want to create an e-course on how to buy a HUD home. What is a HUD home? Who can buy HUD homes? What are the timelines? What do you need to have before you buy that? In a series of emails that may be actually linked to a blog post or a video, and then schedule those emails to go out on once a day over a week or so, or maybe every other day, and then call it an e-course. What it is it's a drip autoresponder system, and that's what we used to call it. We used to say we have a drip campaign, and an e-course is a really a nice euphemism for an email campaign that contains valuable information that people will use to help them understand how to do something better. How to maybe how to buy a HUD home, or how to stage their homes, or maybe how to sell their homes on their own. I think that the e-courses and campaigns around FSBOs is really exciting. I think, and if you if you hang with me for a bit, you're going to see some really fun stuff happening around FSBOs, and I'm going to be taking all of this information and doing some really, really fun stuff with FSBOs in the near term here. I love FSBOs. I used to love them as a realtor when I was a realtor, and I still do. You can create a video series. So instead of just having an email that contains the information, you may have an email that has a link to a video that has a small webcast of you, or a small video of you just talking about something for 60 seconds or less or more, but under 2 minutes. But that kind of video series is very popular. You might also offer them a free consultation with you if they attend, and of course a consultation is something that gets you on the phone with them or in person with them, and helps you connect offline in a very, very meaningful way. We're going to be talking about why a webinar is important, and why a webinar is good is because a webinar is something that really, really is makes people think of attending. It's an event, so there's a different thought about that. than there is, when there isn't not an event attached to it. So people, make put something on their calendar. They make an event. They make a commitment to attend. And when people are making that kind of a commitment, they're giving it a lot of attention. We're going to be talking about live webinars. Okay, live webinars happen in real time. You've got, you have video and audio. You can see the screen. You can see a screen, and you can hear somebody speaking. When you see the screen, you can see the presentation, and sometimes you can also see the presenter. The audio it happens on the telephone or on the computer. If you're listening to this live, I've given you a choice with GoToWebinar of listening to this on the telephone using a telephone number that GoToWebinar provides, or by VoIP on the computer. As a webinar presenter, you should understand and you should know that when people have, an opportunity to do one or the other, that a telephone is the type of audio receiving instrument that really works best. And if you're going to start doing webinars and you haven't already, what you will find, I guarantee, over time is that you will have a lot of people who are listening to it on their computer who will say they're having great difficulty. A lot of the difficulty in listening on the computer is difficulty that is an absolute function of a person's computer and or connection. And I know that if I have hundreds of people on the line, I may have, let's say, 600 people on a line. If I have 500 who can hear me fine, and there will be 100 who will always say, maybe not that many at a time, but usually there's a fairly good sized number and percentage of people who just can't hear it. And again, that becomes another reason for for people to start thinking about what we call an evergreen webinar. Okay, an evergreen webinar is not something in real time. It has the video. It can be somewhat interactive, but it's different. Okay, it is different because it's pre-recorded. It's automated. What I'm going to be doing with today's live webinar is taking the video or videos, because I'm going to have a lot of videos, and I'm going to be creating some evergreen webinars. And those are evergreen webinars that will contain video. They will also, my evergreen webinars will simulate a live webinar, and there will be a feeling by the people who are attending that, they'll have a sense that it's happening live. There are certain presentation skills attached to doing a live webinar, that can be used well as an evergreen webinar. And I'll give you an example. I promised you earlier that I would share with you, a mistake and a faux pas. Now, if I was really, really paying attention, I would probably not say this morning or this afternoon or this evening or make it, or refer to the time of day. I would not refer to the date or the season, because an evergreen webinar is something that is not, it's something that somebody can listen to anytime. If you're only going to show conduct your webinars in the morning, then it's okay to say this morning. I was on an evergreen webinar recently, and you know what? I thought I was going to a live webinar. It didn't matter. It was a wonderful internet marketer, and it was quite interesting because I signed up for a morning webinar and I was attending in the morning, and he said, "Yeah, tonight, this evening, this is what we've been talking about." And it was obvious to me that it was an evergreen webinar, but it was also obvious that he kind of missed it, because if he was planning an evergreen webinar when he did it live, then he probably would have avoided saying that. And if he hadn't said that, I probably would have been left wondering, was it live or wasn't it? Because evergreen webinars can be also very, very interactive, just like another webinar. You can have a poll. You can have a poll where people can vote, and you can show some results. We're going to talk about that a little bit. There are ways of doing that are cool ways of doing it, and others that are not. I mean, obviously, you don't want to create a poll and create an end result for a poll that is designed to meet your agenda, whether it's a sales agenda or any kind of agenda. Do I build polls into my evergreen webinars? Yes, occasionally I do, but I only do that with information that I have already received on, in other webinars and in other live events, where I get results that are consistently the same. I'll give you an example about that. I work in real estate social media policies and procedures area. I'm a co-author of a manual about that, and I do some training. And my co-author and I have done lots of webinars and lots of training. And when we can ask a question and poll the audience, does your brokerage have a written social media policy and procedure manual? And it's never been higher than 10%. So, it wasn't higher than 10% 2 or 3 years ago, and it still isn't in live types of events. So would I be comfortable in having a poll like that in an evergreen webinar? Yes, in that kind of a case, I would. Again, it's not something that you want to manufacture. You want to use that judiciously. You want to be smart about it. You want to be honest. But I think that's a kind of a neat thing to do. Chat, you can have an interactive chat on an evergreen webinar, and we'll talk about that. I've actually monitored my chat, and I'll show you how, because I'm going to do a whole couple of pieces on evergreen webinar. I have actually had real-time exchanges with people who were sitting on evergreen webinars that I had, and then establish relationships with them. There's no voice, no voice on an evergreen webinar. You can't, jump in the middle of it. You can't, involve yourself in live, in real time, on an evergreen webinar, because it's video based. So, you should know that. Selecting a webinar platform. We'll talk about some different webinar platforms, because there are, different types of webinars. So for live webinars, what do we want to think about? What do we recommend? What do we talk about? I'll tell you what I think. And I'm going to add one here too. Hold on a second here. I'm going to add Skype. And I'm going to add one more here. I'm going to add Yagma. Okay. One of the things I like about the mind maps is that in the middle of a presentation, if something occurs to you, you can just make a change on the fly. You can't do that with a PowerPoint presentation very, very easily without going back, and that's a little bit more of a commotion. That's one of the reasons I like my mind mapping. So let's talk about live webinars here for a second, and what I recommend and what I think you should take a look at. I think GoToWebinar is really good right now. They certainly had their challenges for some years with technology. It was very, very spotty. It was really not very, very reliable for a long time. I was very disenchanted with them, but they really have come a long way. One of the nice things that they have going for them right now is it's called HD Faces, where you can actually have the picture of the presenter, not just a picture, but a live view with your webcam while you're presenting. I could have done that with this series here right now. The reason I didn't was because it just came out of beta. I've seen a couple of people use that in their webinars. They did not do it very successfully. The only real successful applications I've seen so far have been, in GoToWebinar training tutorials, and so I didn't want to take that chance. I will be doing it very shortly. As soon as the first round of these webinars is finished, I'm going to move my platform over to that. What happens is, once you go from the platform as it exists now and you change to that, you can't go back. So because this is what I know and this is what I've done and I've got it down, I just didn't want to risk that. But GoToWebinar is great. They have lots of really, really good functionality. They've got all their bases covered, and I think that's a good one. WebEx does a terrific job. WebEx really is the gold standard of webinar technology. WebEx is great, but it's more expensive for the most part. So you pay a lot more. And it's great. I've presented on WebEx many, many times, and it's a good program. If you want to check that out, that's great. If you're going to be doing lots of webinars, definitely check it out. And talk to the reps who are answering the phone and cut a deal. There's a lot of negotiating that happens in webinars. Instant Teleseminar I like. It's a little more static than the others. You have to upload your PowerPoint, so you can't really you can't really, work with animations and things, and it's uploaded to their platform, so you can't make any changes to anything once it's there. But it's really, really easy to work with once you've uploaded it. It's very easy to advance, and it's very, very easy to operate. I'm going to do a separate video here on a couple of the workarounds, but I think that's a very, very good service. A couple of good things that I like about it a lot are the fact that it creates a really great landing page, and it creates a recording of your webinar that's available immediately afterward, and that's pretty neat. So instant teleseminar, and the other thing is that it's a teleseminar service as well. Certainly, if you wanted to use GoToWebinar as a teleseminar service, you can also do that, and then of course you would be using the telephone number primarily, and that's the whole idea with teleconferences. Although you can also listen to it online. So if you don't want to be interacting, or you might even be interacting, the VoIP is okay for some people. I personally have no problem with VoIP. I have no problem with computers, working with the computer speakers and microphones versus the telephone. But again, if you're going to be doing this, you need to know as a presenter that a lot of people will have that problem. There's a new platform now called AnyMeeting at anymeeting.com. That's a free live webinar platform, and they do recording. I looked at it. I haven't used it yet. I've seen some people using it. It seems to have lots of really good features, lots of good functions, and I think it's definitely worth looking at. They have a paid version. The free version is supported by advertising, and if that's if you think that's all right, that's fine. I personally don't think that coming up with a webinar that has advertising for all kinds of products around it is really, really a good idea for a professional. I think it looks a little cheesy, to be honest with you, but people are using it, they're happy with it, and and the paid version looks pretty neat. There's another company called Stealth. They started with Evergreen Webinars, and I haven't used this one yet. I don't think that they're as fully featured as some of the others, but I hear wonderful things about their customer service, and that's the reason I'm mentioning that here. I've heard people talk about it. People like Frank Kern, who is Mr. Big in the internet marketing community. Frank Kern is probably the single most brilliant internet marketer on planet Earth. And in a book I recently read about webinars by Lewis Howes, he talks about Stealth, and he's been using Stealth. So I think it's worth mentioning. I haven't used it myself, but I think you can take a look at that. Skype, again, for small groups. You definitely look at it. Skype is great. It does get squirrely. So, if you schedule a mastermind or you schedule some kind of a meeting webinar and it just doesn't work on Skype, everybody pretty much, goes with the flow because everybody has that experience. So, it's very, very forgiving. It's usually not your fault. It's usually something to do with the connection, and people know that. For that reason, you don't want to do anything too critical on Skype where you don't have a backup plan. There's a platform called Yugma that also is a live webinar platform. Yugma, I used to use that quite a bit. They also had a paid platform. They had paid and a fee platform. Quite interesting. You might want to go and check that out. Yugma also has a plugin for Skype, so you can use Yugma in conjunction with Skype to conduct your webinars. And I used to do quite a bit with them and like them a lot. There are some that have just come off the market and either been bought out by somebody or just not worth talking about. There are, the other thing about live webinars is there are a lot of companies that offer webinars right now as part of multi-level marketing programs, and most of those, to be honest with you, that I've looked at, I don't like. I don't like the features that are that are attached to them. Some of them may be very, very easy, but they're really not as robust as the stuff that I look at. So when they're part of a multi-level marketing plan, I tend to stay away from them. The features that you want to look at, or what kind of presentations can you give on that? If you want to be able to use lots of different types of presentations, You're going to go with something like GoToWebinar. If you want to go on the live web, you're not going to use somebody like Instant Teleseminar, for instance, or some others. So take a look and see how featured they are. What do you want to do? What kind of presentations do you want to give? And take a look at that. If you want to go live on the web, it's going to just leave certain people out. So take a look and see what the features are, and what you want to do. Take a look and see what their registration procedures are like. Some of them will build a list for you and give you a list of registrants and give you a list of people who attended, tell you how long they attended, and then collect other information. GoToWebinar will do that. It will collect the information from the survey that you put out. It will also collect any engagement that happens when people are online. So when you pull up an Excel spreadsheet after you have completed a webinar, you will get the person's name, you'll get their email address, you will get the results of of the survey that they filled in. You will get any text transcripts of chat that they've had, and also if they have responded to polls that you've created, you will get that as well. I like to be able to work with integrated cross-channel features in my webinar. I'm just tired. I have grown weary of working with a million channels. Working with multiple channels, multiple communication channels is not the same as cross-channel marketing. Working with multiple channels means you have more stuff to do. It means you have more technology to keep track of, in many cases, more technology to pay for. And if the technology doesn't talk to each other, it's a pain in the neck. So I have really, 2011 and 2012 have been a time that I've come together and really, married my technology so that I'm working with fewer platforms, but the technology talks to each other. In terms of the webinar, it's one of the reasons I'm working with two autoresponder systems, Aweber and Instant Customer. It's because I can take my Aweber account, and I've been collecting registrations, from GoToWebinar, and I can do it in one process instead of two. I can make my Aweber account and my Instant Customer account talk to each other. So if I'm getting a new customer registration on Aweber, I can send that to a campaign in Instant Customer, where I have the ability to work with SMS text messaging, and I can create the QR code, and I can work with voicemail marketing, and I can have a built-in evergreen system, and I can have a contest platform where I can give away a free gift or whatever. So having integrated cross-channel features to me is very, very important. If that's not important to you, then almost anything works. But the choices that I've made in my technology, the technology that I'm talking about on blogmotherfran.com, everything that I talk about really has an eye to marrying technology and to making technology work and talk to each other, one channel to the next, to make it easier to build your business, to collect registrations, to build a list, to communicate with the people on your list, really to connect with them, build their trust, build your credibility, build your expert authority. And at the end of the day, have them, engage with you in a transactional relationship. Buy something from you, sell something through you, hire you as a consultant. If you're a vendor and you sell something else, people will be buying. So it's a matter of establishing a relationship and enough trust that those are people who want to do business with you. And I think that's accomplished much more easily with a cross-channel system. And then, of course, finally, and last but not least, are evergreen webinars. And I've got two different evergreen webinar systems. I had Evergreen Business Systems first. It's a really neat system. I'm going to explain them both to you. And I have an Instant Customer evergreen webinar that's really, really easy to use, very, very simple, and it works with everything else that you have. So I'll tell you what I'll be doing. For instance, this webinar right now, this view from 30,000 feet will be a a webinar that I will move into and create an evergreen webinar. I'll create an evergreen webinar at Instant Customer. I'll also create an evergreen webinar at my EBS system here. And I will do that within another video. So after I have created this video, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move it over into the platform that we have for you over on Kajabi, on my membership site on blogmotherfran.com. Then I'm going to take that same video, I'm going to create an evergreen webinar, I'm going to create a landing page, I'm going to create a campaign around it, and I'm going to do that in a way that you can look over my shoulder and you can see exactly how I do that every step of the way.